Hi, Hakan.
Hi, Elizabeth.
We're back. We are pursuing wisdom,
Yes,
one
we are.
wise contributor at a time. Today, we have some amazing guests.
Yes. Today, we focus on the wisdom of intrapreneurship. And for this, we have a fabulous guest, Professor Rosabeth Moss Kanter, the author of the Think Outside the Building. And Dr. Kanter is a professor of business administration at the Harvard Business School in a period spanning more than 4 decades. Her research on strategy, innovation, and leadership has influenced the thinking patterns in management field. She has co-founded the Harvard University-wide Advanced Leadership Initiative, which has set an innovative exemplar for how universities can educate business leaders. Accordingly, she has been known as one of the top business thinkers and one of the most influential women in America. At a personal level, Professor Kanter is a special person for me because her book titled Men and Women of the Corporation is the first scholarly book I've read in my life when I was an undergraduate student in business. So welcome, Professor Kanter. And we also have our returning guest, Deputy City Manager, Ms. Megan MacPherson from the City of Roseville. So now I'm gonna quickly jump into our session and ask Professor Kanter, please briefly tell us about what is intrapreneurship and who is an intrapreneur?
So first of all, I believe that people can be entrepreneurial from any role. It's not just operating a startup. It's thinking about new ideas wherever you are. And so people inside organizations in any sector can be very entrepreneurial. In fact, they have to. If we are going to make progress, if we're going to tackle big problems and solve them, we need people who use their creativity and insight to get something done. They may do it through an established structure, or they may do it what I call outside the building. I think even inside an organization, you have to think outside the building because new ideas don't drop themselves on you in the boxes you already have. They require challenging conventional wisdom, finding new pathways, creating new allies, and then putting the solution to use.
Professor Kanter, you know what we love about your work is it's so optimistic. We're always looking to find the light at the end of the tunnel in the Wisdom Studio. And your optimism is based on stories and research and hard facts. We have with us today an example, we believe, of a successful intrapreneur in Megan, who is the Deputy City Manager in the City of Roseville, California. Megan, you launched a number of very innovative initiatives in your city, and you've found success in a time of crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about your evolution within your organization as an intrapreneur?
Yes, I guess I'll start by saying I didn't really realize the term intrapreneur and that's what kind of a role that I had been filling at my city. And I really appreciate what Professor Kanter said, that it can come at different levels of the organization. You don't have to have a certain position to be an intrapreneur. And when I joined the city about 13 years ago, I had done 10 years as a private sector consultant. So being hired for, looking at the landscape and coming up with new ideas. So coming into the public sector, that was something that I was used to doing. And, public sector, we're so controlled by rules and regulations that sometimes it gets probably disheartening to come up with new ideas and try them out, and be told that, for this reason, that won't work. The organization I'm with is very receptive to new ideas. At the same time, I kept asking why, because I didn't have a public sector background. So why and why not? So I think once, in my evolution, understanding the parameters that I had to work within was very helpful to kind of know how far I could go and how far I could take it. And absolutely, like Professor Kanter said, building allies across the organization has been very helpful. And there have been dark periods through that too. Sometimes it's a season where people aren't as receptive. There's other priorities, or personalities don't create the kind of atmosphere where these new ideas thrive. And so when I've hit those, I've kind of gone external more. I've worked on external relationships worked with nonprofits, and kind of found other outlets for that creativity.
And I think I would like to highlight that Megan's work, Megan did some really interesting things in feeding her community, which is a common initiative in cities, large cities, but she also was able to garner the support of the city and get them to contribute and actually raise their taxes, simply put. She got the community to decide to contribute to the whole, which is very difficult to do at the local level. And that is saving the city right now, those contributions. And I'd also like to just include this quote from Think Outside the Building. Professor Kanter, you say, when the national gets ugly, the local can be beautiful. And Megan, your contributions, I thought you might.
And so much in this book resonated with me. I can't believe that it was written before the chaos of the moment that we're in, because you go through it and you talk about pitching a big inclusionary tent and just dealing with some of these the tough times that we're in, and it's very instructional. Thank you for sharing it.
And Professor Kanter, you referenced in Think Outside the Building, you referenced the work of Robert Putnam in Bowling Alone and Sherry Turkle in Alone Together. But this work, Think Outside the Building, is a more recent work, and you found really a different story in the landscape as you went out and did research. One of possibilities, endless possibilities, and optimism and accomplishment.
Well, the optimism was the optimism of activism of doing. For the people who are leading under those circumstances, by the way, they don't necessarily think it's risky. They think it's risky to do nothing, but they have to convince other people. And so that's where the sense of clear purpose, the impact, the reason I'm doing it, the motivation, it's not simply following orders, it's toward some impact goal that's so important, I can't not do it. And there are many people who feel that way today. I mean, the books, I mean, Bob Putnam's Bowling Alone, he's a colleague. I think it was a great book. That was one statement of how Americans are more atomized and isolated. And Sherry Turkle was saying that on technology, people are looking at their phones rather than each other. But I find that the people who take on social purpose work are relating to other people in a powerful way, and that's our new form of social capital. Our new form of social capital is not bowling in a league. It's meeting for coffee to plot how the suburban mothers are going to get rid of sex trafficking in their area. Absolutely. And that's a true story, actually. So they're not in a bowling league and they're having coffee, but actually what they're talking about is how they're going to change the world. And that
Professor,
is
your view, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your view of technology in Think Outside the Building is not as that it is an obstacle, but a tool. People are using this, obviously, in this moment, as we all know, it has saved us.
It's certainly a tool. And I mean, it can be an obstacle too. I mean, there are things we have to worry about, depending on how you feel about your privacy, depending on how you feel about certain companies monopolizing everything. On the other hand, that's where activism comes in, because groups organize against that. And we still have governments that end up regulating things, even though it seemed to be the Wild West out there on the internet for a long time. You're from the Wild West in California. Well, no, the Wild West is more Arizona still. But technology is a tool. Technology is something that we can use to connect. We can also use it to escape, but people are using it to connect. And I can't say that everything about having to be all Zoom all the time is positive. I was teaching on Zoom and it was fine. I still would prefer to see people face to face. On the other hand, think about the thousands of people that can be reached at one time. The thing about these technology tools, and this is something we should think about, because I do, besides referring to our army of democracy, the new democracy is activism at the local level. That's the source of democracy.
That's Megan.
Yeah.
But
We see that.
the technology is also something that doesn't necessarily by itself organize for change. It's a lot easier to organize protests and get people to show up than it is to organize institutional change. For institutional change, you still need leaders who organize, who they may do it collaboratively, but who lead, who guide, who line up the other people, the right coalitions. They're not leaving it to crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is really great for a glimmer of an idea. It's really great for organizing being against something. But to be for something requires the kind of advanced leadership that I talk about, where nobody told you to do it. You may be an employee in middle ranks, you may be the deputy city manager, you may be the CEO, you may be an entrepreneur on the outside or a community activist, but nobody's telling you to do this. But you get started at developing an idea, finding the right people, and then continuing to improve upon the idea as the feedback comes from your first steps.
So eventually, with all the strengths and potential challenges of technology, it's the humankind old story. It's all about how we think and how we think about it, and then how we act on it after thinking about it in a constructive manner. So you can take anything and make it extremely constructive or extremely destructive depending on how you think. And at a time where everything is blurring, you just need to think a lot more clearly and also in a lot more optimistic fashion. And this is why we are creating mental maps in this Wisdom Studio episodes. And I'm grateful to Professor Kanter and MacPherson for being us here today in a very enlightening episode.